Hello, my fellow movie fans, and welcome to another episode of A Feast of Films Theatre with your hosts, Matthew Ayalew and Ethan R. Hill. How's that? That was good?
Yeah. Classic. Classic.
Hello, my fellow movie fans, and welcome to another episode of A Feast of Films. I'm Ethan R. Hill, and with me, as always, is...
Matt Ayalew. What's going on, people?
Oh, what's going on, Matt? How you doing? How's your week been? Has it been super? You had a super week?
My week has been super duper. It's been more so, but...
Has it been heroic?
No, I would say not.
Has it been super heroic? It has not been super heroic?
No, it's been more like Clark Kent.
Hey,
it hasn't been Superman, but it's been Clark Kent. You know, it's just been chill dude, nice shirt,
mild-mannered,
got my glasses, mild-mannered, just kind of chill.
It's a mild-mannered reporter kind of week.
Yeah, not really the, flying through the sky in the blue tights with the beautiful red cape and that big old S on your chest. Yeah, it hasn't been one of those weeks.
He still gets into a lot of trouble, man.
Week. It hasn't been
a lot of trouble for being mild-mannered.
That is true, but it hasn't been a Lex Luthor week, so there's that.
You're not balding?
No. Well, I am.
That's good.
I am, but it's not gone yet. How's your week been, buddy?
I'm here. I made it to the podcast. We're recording, and yeah, that's the important part. Otherwise, it's been a week.
You got it, man.
Life is having its way with me, and I don't appreciate that, but I'm sure it'll be fine, and life finds a way. So, yeah. I smell something burning.
Is it your
hair?
Having
a stroke? I'm having a stroke. No, I smell something, though.
Well, you know what? We just keep recording, and what's the worst that could possibly happen? Your house burns down. Yeah, well, at least,
It's fine. Everything's fine here. How are you?
My house is on fire. You're like that dog just in there. Like, it's all good, man. Everything's fine.
Exactly. I even have my coffee right here. It's fine. It's all fine.
Everything is fine. Fine as wine.
So this week we have an exciting show planned. At least I think it's exciting. We're going to talk about some superhero films.
Yeah!
That's all I really know about it. We're going to talk about some superhero films, and then next week we're going to be talking about diversity and why it's important in media.
Diversity and inclusion, like why it's important for those types of, for that to happen, especially like in our society right now, and why, kind of why it's important. And you'll get two very different viewpoints, but again, that's next week. I wouldn't say different, but I mean, like, not as far as like whether we agree or disagree.
I was gonna say, I'm like,
but from the perspective of two different people.
Well, I mean, viewpoint is a perspective, so
yeah.
I think I can follow you, but it's
I was like, way
to make me sound like a terrible person. Yeah, we're gonna definitely disagree on whether inclusion is good or not, and the results will shock you.
There we go. So that's next week. So make sure you guys tune into that next week. But this week, talking about superhero films that are important in our society. Why are they so big right now? And like some of our favorite things about them and some of our favorite shows. I know we both watched one of the fairly newer ones that's come out lately on Amazon Prime. We've both seen that one.
Yes.
Invincible.
If it wasn't for like copyright claims, we could have totally cut away to like that
exactly
opening,
where
it
says everything. It's like, when they use the word invincible for everything.
It's so good. I love it.
It's so like it's its own thing, man, and I did really enjoy it. But we both got a chance to sit down and actually watch that over the last
without planning that too.
Last couple weeks. No, I didn't know you were doing that, but
I didn't know you were doing that either. We found out literally
today,
like a half hour ago. Yeah.
So I thought that was it's a good place to start. What did you think of the series? What are your overall thoughts on it? Like,
well, just even like with why we're talking about superheroes today is just there's been superheroes popping up everywhere for me again. And, like, they've been everywhere now. Like, there's a pretty major thing in our cultural zeitgeist now. But just recently, the last couple weeks, it feels like every time I turn around, there's a new superhero thing cropping up. So I feel like it's time we actually address it rather than just discussing Marvel movies or DC or anything like that and just talk about superhero stuff in general. And with that, I loved Invincible. I thought it was so good. It's definitely not family friendly. It's
no, definitely not.
It's fun. It starts out like it though. Like it kind of starts out. We are like, oh yeah, like this wouldn't be terrible to show my kids, and then
but that's the kicker. That for like, we're not gonna tell you any spoilers here, but that's the kicker of that whole first episode, right? Like you're watching it, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure what the hype is about because this was like. Is it like I think I started when it was on episode 5 or something, so like 3/4 of the way through, and I was like, I'm not sure what the hype is about with this because it seems pretty like standard superhero stuff. Like it didn't seem like too crazy or out of the way. And then you get to like the last like 10 minutes, you're like, okay, I'm in. Like I'm sold.
I appreciated that they like, and this is a whole thing too. Like I'm very torn on it, but like I appreciate they didn't hold back on the violence. It is very much as an animated show. It is a very grounded in reality kind of show. It is very much.
Have you read the comics at all?
I am actually in the process of reading it.
Okay, cool. Because I haven't seen it. Is it that graphic in the comics as well?
Yes. It's weird. So like I just started reading the comics this week actually.
Right.
After we finished the show, I was like, okay, I want to see what the comics are. And it's very different structurally. Like the story is told very differently. Very similar moments, but it is still pretty violent. It is violent, but like the animation makes it that much more violent. And the way they chose to shot it and show things, it's a lot more gory in the show,
right?
Because it's gore.
It's gory in the comics.
Yeah. And comics in general are actually pretty violent and pretty gory, but they're still images, so there's only so much gore you can really fit into a panel. Whereas, like when you have something moving, when you have something in motion, the violence is heightened.
It's much more visceral. Yeah.
Well, seeing a blood splatter on a panel versus seeing a blood splatter move across your screen.
Yeah.
Right? If someone's head gets smooshed, as like it frequently does in this show, like it's very different seeing in a panel someone's hands together and an eyeball or two going out that way versus seeing someone's hands coming together and seeing the head exploding. Right? Yeah, like it's violent. I would say it is less violent, but it's still up there for the violence. Mm-hmm. Like, but I mean, again, in the world that we live in today, where like Walking Dead is such a mainstream show, we have The Boys and the amount of violence that happens in The Boys. Like,
right,
it's one of those things of like,
The Boys is also really cool.
The Boys is really great. I can't wait for season 3. Like, I'm sold on it. Like, it's interesting how many anti-superhero shows are out now, because it's like, hey, this is about superheroes, but it's holding up a reflection, kind of questioning what actual superheroes would be like in our world.
Right. Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I do think we are getting to a point where it is going to be oversaturated, though.
I 100% agree. Like, at the end of the day, well, there was actually there was an interview with Emily Blunt not too long ago that I seen a couple days ago, not long ago. Like, it's not like it's months. It was not very recently. Because she was asked about being Sue Storm, right? Because people are like, oh, the rumors, are you going to be Sue Storm and John Krasinski, Mr. Fantastic? And she kind of broke. Then he was like, no, I haven't got any phone calls, something like that. And then she was saying, like, I'm not really even interested in being in the superhero genre unless they do something like really different, really crazy, or the character's just really well written. Because she feels like it's so much of the same and it's becoming very oversaturated. Like, there's becoming a lot of things. And she's not wrong. When you think about over the years, how many new superhero films or movies have come out on various streaming services, and you're like, actually, it's been quite a lot. And she was actually
like
one of the people who was supposed to play Black Widow, but then
Yeah,
she had to
then
go
she had
do
to-
Gulliver's Travels with Jack Black. So then Scarlett Johansson actually got the role, which is still fine. Like Scarlett's, she's great. But it was
Like,
an
the thing-
interesting point that I thought was actually kind of correct.
Well, the thing that's frustrating though is like you can totally have those characters be written interestingly. You can have that,
Yep.
but like I hate to say it, they're playing it safe. They still play even the shows that like subvert your expectations, like The Boys and like Invincible. They're still playing it safe. You're basing it off of source material. Like actually, because there was that Jupiter's Legacy on Netflix. I haven't watched that one
I
yet.
haven't seen that. Yeah.
But we were at Indigo recently. We were looking at comics, and like right next to Invincible is Jupiter's Legacy. Oh, it's based off a comic. I thought it was something maybe original, but no, like it's always based off these comics. The problem is, again, how many times can you tell the same story
Right.
and translate it into a different media successfully? And that's
Like, and for
I
me,
think it'd
like
be the question.
Yeah, like for me, it always comes down to like the characters and stuff, right? Like that's
'Cause, like-
always prime. But eventually, when
'cause,
when you see the same like visual imagery time and time and time again, right?
Well,
like
that
there
just comes
is
down
kind of a
to-
little bit of a oversaturation that comes with that.
The problem with the visual imagery, though, is that comes down to specifically a lack of visual creativity in shooting your films. It actually harkens back to our conversation, not the last time, but the time before that. So not Star Wars, but the one before. And the problem for me is that with a lot of these superhero stories, it's because it's all about all spectacle all the time now. You don't really get many intimate moments. You don't really get a lot of character moments, except for you want to talk about TV shows like Falcon and Winter Soldier. There were plenty of intimate moments there.
Mm-hmm.
With a few moments of spectacle, and honestly, the spectacle was the weakest part of that series. It was still good, but talking about the level of goodness, the more my favorite moment of that entire series is probably Cap and Winter Soldier playing catch with the shield.
Yeah, that's a great
Where
moment.
we're just throwing it back and forth and talking about what it means to be Captain America.
Yeah.
Great character moment, and a unique moment too. You can't have that moment with Iron Man.
No.
You can't have that moment with Spider-Man. You can't have that moment with
It's unique
Mr.
to their
Fantastic.
characters. Yeah.
100%. And that's what I mean. You can still write these characters interestingly. The problem is a lot of times, especially for the movies, it's very cookie cutter. It's, this character is a jerk who needs to learn a lesson in humility. Oh, well, they got hurt, so now they have to learn how to use their powers and, do better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of the same kind of lessons over and over again. And it's like as weird as it's going to say sound, it's going to sound weird when I say this. More often than not, superheroes are written as plot devices as opposed to as people and characters. Like it's the
Yeah,
Anakin.
expand on that a little bit.
It's like the Anakin Skywalker syndrome. Anakin Skywalker in episode 1, 2, and 3 isn't a character. He's what drives the plot. He's the entire... the entire plot is that this is the fall of Darth Vader. So the entire story of the prequel trilogy is Darth Vader's fall. Okay, well, Batman movies. Well, it's about Batman solving a crime. So it's Batman, he goes on the journey to solve the crime, but really he is the journey. He's the plot. That's the only reason you follow him. He doesn't grow and change because he's Batman. He doesn't learn a lesson because he's Batman. And, like, arguably, you could make arguments for, like, the Dark Knight and stuff like that to a point, because I don't think he actually learned a lesson, but that's my... We've discussed that. We know my opinions on that. But even, like, it's... Again, I guess it's kind of the adventure trope, too. A lot of times, like, when you have an adventure movie, your hero sometimes learns a lesson, but doesn't. Like Indiana Jones, does he learn a lesson in any of his movies? I think Last Crusade, he learns a lesson, kind of, about letting things go and that family's more important.
Yeah, most of the time, a lot of those characters have like flat arcs, at the very least, right? Like it's not like a growth. It's not like they're better off or worse off at the end. They're just kind of the same.
And that's because they're stand-ins for people.
I kind of
basically-
get what you're saying. Let me.
The-
Sorry, I'll let you finish there.
Basically, what it is that they're the main characters more often than not are blank slates for the people, the audience, to go on the ride with. Like that's why your Luke Skywalker is kind of a bland character, is wrong to say, but like he's very, he's average. He's your everyman. Same thing with Harry Potter. Same thing with, I know Tony Stark is larger than life, but again, he's who the audience is going through this movie with. It's I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird thing, and to me, it's one of those things of a lot of times superheroes specifically, are written as plot devices as opposed to characters. Not all the time. There are massive exceptions frequently, but I think that's why there's that overwhelming sense of we're getting the same thing over and over again, because we are getting the same thing over and over again, just slightly different costumes. And then on top of it too, especially we want to talk about Marvel films, a lot of times they go through, I saw someone break down this in a post once. Each phase has the same type of villain that they need to fight. And it's the sympathetic villain in one phase, and the other ones are like the mirror versions of them, of the heroes, in another phase. And like apparently that's just a thing that's cycled through. I saw a post, I don't remember it, but that was like I think a year or so ago.
So like I don't think I agree with you 100%. I believe I'm sure there are certain times where it's like the hero is kind of a plot device more than a character. Like I don't think it's a bad thing to have a character that you connect with, that you go on the journey with. You know what I mean? Like I think that's part of the whole thing. Like if you don't actually connect with the character and you're not going on the journey with them, like what are you doing, man? Like you're not getting involved or engrossed in the movie. I think that's actually a flaw then becomes of writing and storytelling, because you want them to connect to the character. You want them to go with them. But I get kind of where your head's at, and this is my kind of counter perspective on that, I guess. Because I think there's two different types of films, especially when you're talking about superhero ones. There's your more like, normal character-driven stories where you have a character who goes through a positive change arc, like they're a piece of crap at the beginning, they learn a lesson by the end or something, or they grow and they develop and they get better. MCU, obviously, you get multiple of those, and sometimes expanding over multiple film character arcs, right? Whether you're talking about especially Tony Stark, Captain America, I think those are the two characters they really focused on throughout that whole 10 years. Out of all the characters, you tell me they gave Ant-Man the same time as Iron Man? I don't think so, right?
The thing is, I'll say Iron Man probably has the most fleshed out arc. Steve's is still confusing to me. Steve's doesn't make any sense.
Steve's does, and it makes total sense to me. But anyway, that's not the point I'm trying to make here. The point is I'm saying there are character arcs, and there are things you can only do within a couple hours of time, including action and stuff. There are films, though, that I would say don't have character arcs, that are more scenario pieces. Like it's not a character-driven story. It's like, here's a scenario, and the characters are kind of the players in the scenario. Like I would call Infinity War a scenario story. You know what I mean? Like none of the characters actually grow and change by the end. None of them get to develop these new ways to look on life. Because honestly, there's way too many characters in that film to give anyone half a chance at some sort of character arc. The most we get out of it is Thanos. But that's not even a character arc. We're just getting a little deeper and understanding him as a character, right? To me, like, that's a scenario type of film. High action, high octane, not a lot of, like, big character moments. If you don't know who the characters are before going in, you're not going to become super attached to their journeys on the way. You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of one of the things from the MCU that works well, that you can have those types of films. But I think those are kind of the two types of things you have where, maybe the character is a bit more of a plot device and it's in a scenario and there's less actually focus on who the character is, and it's more about the action and the powers and the whatever, right? And like even like you mentioned, Indiana Jones, like I think some of those are scenario pieces where he just finds himself in a scenario, but he's not actually changing that much as a character. right? Like he's kind of the same from beginning to end.
Well,
And that's kind of like my counter little perspective on that. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but that's just the way I look at it.
The trick with the Infinity War comparison is the problem is Infinity War is not a complete arc, right? Like that's like the Infinity War and Endgame need to be viewed as one piece.
No, I disagree with that.
I stand by that.
I totally disagree. They're completely standalone. You could watch it by yourself and be like, "Oh, they lost. Too bad." Like that's the end of the film. Because like the next one, like maybe picks up right back to back where they kill Thanos, but then you're jumping 5 years. It's not like they're overly connected.
No, dude. It's one big arc because at the end of Infinity War, they've reached their lowest point. They've reached their lowest point, and then they don't. Basically, they're at their lowest point at the beginning of Endgame. They stay there until they have a shift very early on after they go and they kill Thanos and they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. And then they realize that didn't do anything. And then they have this shift where they realize about time travel and they approach it from a different way. And that creates their uptake of approaching the problem from a different angle. It's really interesting because essentially...
But you're also filling into my point of like character arcs over multiple films. And I will say there is a Phase 3 trilogy with Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. As far if you're looking at that arc over the long term, like there is definitely a 3-part story going on there. But if you just look at Infinity War by itself, like it's just a scenario. Like the characters aren't actually changing. They're already at their lowest point when we get there. The Avengers are already broken up. They're already divided. Like it's just a scenario that happens at their low point, and then Endgame's kind of their uptick, like you said.
See, I would disagree where they're not at their lowest point yet. They're at the beginning of their lowest point. They're at the beginning of their decline.
But their characters don't change. Like that's what I'm saying. Like over the course of the film, there's not a nice character arc for each of the characters. They're just in that event.
Yeah, like there really
and then
isn't.
It gets snapped away. Like and then they're just there, right? If that was a character arc, it would just be literally from point 1, point 2, done. Like there's no actual arc or development of the characters or change. That happens over the longer course of time, but that's kind of the whole strategy of the MCU in general.
I think, again, that is still a problem with a majority of the Marvel films, because even the Marvel Spider-Man films, Peter doesn't have really an arc or a change. Peter just kind of goes through the events, and then he's like, oh yeah, I'm Spider-Man. At the end of every movie, at the end of the 2 movies he's had, the entire question is like, am I Spider-Man? Am I gonna be Iron Man? I'm Spider-Man.
Iron Man Jr.
And that's for 2 movies we've had so far with him. Whereas if you look at the Sam Raimi movies, we'll specifically focus on 1 and 2, and you look at the Andrew Garfield.
2 is so good.
And you look at the Andrew Garfield of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, both of those movies have character moments and character arcs and growths and change. You have those moments where they have their ups and their downs, and you have a shift by the end of it. Whereas with Homecoming and Far From Home, you don't really have those shifts. You're going along for a ride. And that's nothing wrong with that. Like, cinema is meant to be escapism. And I think that's, honestly, I think that is why superhero films have taken off as much as they have, is because it is like the ultimate escapism. People are kind of understanding and realizing why comic books have been so successful for so long. It's you can go into a world that is you can see and understand that world, because it's not like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, where, okay, there's humans there, but it's a completely different world. You're going into alternate universe New York. You're going into, yeah, it's Gotham, but you know cities that are like Gotham. You know cities that are like Metropolis. You can see a lot of roots of our world in that, which helps with escapism, because you can disassociate easier. And I think especially with the state of the world nowadays, you can escape easier and you can solve problems a lot easier.
So do you think that, forgetting your problems, separating yourself from the world, that distraction, do you think that is why superhero films are so popular nowadays? Like, is that kind of your basic idea? Like, you think that's why they really kicked off and got going? It's that escapism?
I think a huge part of it, because, like, especially if you look at especially how they were treated when, not to use 9/11 to win any kind of argument, but like when 9/11 happened, like look at the superhero films that happened before and then right after, and there was a massive shift in tone and change. And like they still were popping out superhero films over, and like superhero films were never really gonna go away. They looked like they might have around between 2004 to 2008, but there were still superhero films every year between from 2004 to 2008. From
It's just not the same level of popularity, for sure. More niche.
They still made a lot of money. People went and saw them because I mean, you had Spider-Man 3.
Oh yeah, I guess Spider-Man.
Superman
I forget
Returns.
those early ones there.
I think
Wait,
Fantastic
were you talking
Four
early
2.
2000s?
So
After
2004,
X-Men, though, right?
yes, X-Men
Okay,
happened, and Spider-Man happened, and we had those two coming out. I think 99, or it was 2000, 2001, 2002. I think we had another X-Men movie. In 2003, I think we had another X-Men movie. And also the Hulk, and then we had Batman Begins come out in 2004 or 2005. But we had
probably 5.
We've since X-Men, we have had a superhero film every single year. I'm like 90%. I'm 99% sure.
I'm not 100% sure. This is my best guess.
I'd have to go back and look.
Best
but like,
guess.
But we had those come out, and then and like people were still accepting of them. Like Batman Begins, people liked, but they were still kind of on the fence of like, okay, another Batman movie, all right.
Well, yeah, that
And
one was
then-
coming after Batman and Robin, so it didn't have a lot of. There was some
and, like,
people questioning what's going on here.
Hollywood was trying to find their footing after 9/11. There's a lot of awkward films in that early 2000s era where the tone is just doesn't make any sense at all. It's a very confusing time because what kind of escapism do people want? And a lot of people didn't want escapism. They didn't want to like necessarily run away because suddenly a lot of the stuff that people were trying to escape from was right there in their face of like, oh no, we can't ignore this massive thing that happened in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, like just also to like bring up that too, it's specifically like, unfortunately a lot of it is US based, US centric, because that's where the movies get made, right?
Yeah,
so that's
no, for sure.
That's unfortunately the reality of that situation and why there's so much focus on that. But then 2 films happened that changed the tone and the idea of what superhero films were, and that was Iron Man and Dark Knight. Those came out the same year and just completely shifted that. It gave people the right sense of escapism that they needed, where it was very much grounded in reality. It still had some fantastical elements, but you could relate to the world that you were in, and you could solve your problems. You're suddenly... The beautiful thing about Saturday morning cartoons, comic books, superhero movies, at the end of the day, if you can't figure out your problem with your brain, you can punch your way out of it, and you'll be fine. There's easier solutions. Things are always neatly wrapped up. And I think the idea of easier solutions is also massively appealing to people. It's the fact that no matter what, and that's I think why a lot of people also vie for having the main character energy, as it's called, because main characters always come out on top. They always win. And that's great, but that's not life. No one's a main character in life. You're the main character.
We're all
of
the
your
main
life,
character of our own story.
but that means no one's the main character.
My movie sucks though. Don't watch it.
And that's the thing is like at the end of the day, it comes down to, I think it is escapism. I think it's the fact that it's like, it's escapism in the sense of you're escaping to a world that you believe you could escape into easily. You can easily escape into a superhero world or to a comic book world a lot easier than to Lord of the Rings. A lot easier than to Star Wars.
That's interesting. I have a very different perspective on that, but that's an interesting thought. And I can't 100% say you're wrong. And what it comes down to is ultimately everyone goes and sees films for different reasons a lot of the time, right? So I'm sure there are a lot of people who go to see films just for the pure escapism of it.
If it makes you feel any better, Matt, I literally came up with that on the spot.
Well, that doesn't change
This
anything.
is not a,
like, it's
this
just
is
an
not a
idea.
preconceived thought. This is
No, but like it's just interesting the way you think about like your perspective on that. Because for me, like it always comes back down to something else. Like your thought of the escapism to me seems like very analytical almost. You know what I mean? Like it's the escapism of it, and it's like for me, I think it's just, and not that escapism isn't emotionally based, because it clearly is. Like you're trying to escape from whatever your problems are, you're trying to be rescued by something, or whatever kind of the whole psychological reasoning is. I don't know, I take more of a not pessimistic view. What's the other view? Optimistic. That's the word. Optimistic view of it, like why these things have become so popular. Kevin Feige was actually interviewed a couple of years ago, and he was saying one of the films that actually changed everything as far as Hollywood and how they looked at the superhero genre was the first X-Men film. Like, and you can see from
100%.
X-Men on, like a very, it wasn't an immediate shift, but it was a slow, gradual, getting up to that Iron Man and stuff.
The best way to actually look at that too, like to kind of piggyback off that, the best place to look to kind of get an idea of the big thing that was holding it back was costuming.
Well, it wasn't even costume. Like he didn't mention costuming in that.
It's a huge indicator, because if you look at the costumes in superhero films before that, they either look really cheesy, like, and super cheap.
Fair enough.
Like you look at the old Superman films, or they look impossible to move in. Look at the Batman movies. People didn't want spandex. There's even the joke in the first X-Men movie about like, oh, you guys go out in public in these things, and it's the leather costume, and his response, like Cyclops' response, would you prefer yellow spandex?
Yeah.
Because people weren't ready for that yet. But they made it that grounded in realistic. You could believe that people would go out and do these superhero things, and I think at least that's just my guess, but I'll let you finish saying what you were saying before I rudely interrupted you.
Anyway, yeah, dick. No, but one of the things he was talking about, I think, was it changed a lot of the perspectives and how they can do these films. Because before it was just like, ooh, look, it's Batman, or ooh, look, it's Superman, or like, I guess, the Christopher Reeve ones are very classic, and the Tim Burton, but once you get to Joel Schumacher's Batmans, things kind of start going off the rails a little bit more. And like, no one really took them seriously. But like, after X-Men, they're like, what do you mean? Like, we can have like actual like character in like these things, not just like, not just like stereotypical so much, what's that? Caricatures, like superhero, that kind of superhero way, but like, actually that whole character like development and like how they interact with each other. That was one of the big important steps. And I think before you go on, I think that was one of the things that's not why I'm saying it's popular. This is just why I'm saying like one of the things that shifted, right? Like in how Hollywood started looking at superhero movies and the actual potential of what they could be. Started with that X-Men film. Now, I think for a lot of people too, it comes down to, and this is just, again, my personal opinion. I can't speak for the masses of people. I'm sure escapism is part of it. But I think the beautiful thing about superheroes, and I think what's always attracted people to superheroes, whether it was comic books or cartoons or films, is they're the best of us. They represent the best human qualities and the best traits. They represent the best character traits that we aspire to be. Like when you talk about Spider-Man, right? You're like, anyone can be behind the mask. Like it's so easy for, you've talked about how Spider-Man was such a huge influence in your life. But he represented the best that you could possibly be. That so many kids growing up watching those Saturday morning animated Spider-Man films, the best they could be. When they watch the Tobey Maguire films, when they watch Iron Man, and they see like, oh, maybe they could recognize and relate with, the greed or the ego and stuff. And they can see, wow, it's possible to change. I don't look at superhero films in the way that it's like, oh, it's escapism, or someone needs to come save me, or I need to be rescued. I think a lot of people get more and more get driven to them because now they become so. And this is against kind of what you were saying before, because I think they're much more character based than some of them used to be. Not all of them, but some of these films used to be, and more consistently. I think people are connecting with these characters on a deeper level and coming back again and again to see their stories. I think people are connecting to what these superheroes represent, whether it's the best of them, whether it's their struggles, whether it's their demons that these superheroes also have to deal with. I think people see those things in themselves and realize I can overcome this. I think it empowers people. Instead of like some people look at superhero films as again a way people are trying to escape or just to be saved from something and waiting. Like one of the Eric Kripke, I think, was it Eric Kripke? Who said that? One of the guys who was doing The Boys. I can't remember if it was the director or producer. But he said, like, oh, the problem with these superhero films is, like, people are just waiting for someone to come save them. And they actually say that in the Boys series, right? Like, one of the characters, like, y'all just sit around waiting for people to come and save you. Or whatever. I think it was the main character there who said that. But I don't think that's it at all. I think it's empowerment. I think that's why people go. It's a sense that this is the best I can be, or these are traits that I can, whether, obviously we can't fly, but to be a good person, to be honorable, to help other people. Like, I think we all just want to be the best person we can be, and superheroes represent that. And I think one of the other things that's so appealing about The Boys and Invincible is it kind of turns that narrative on its head, right? What would happen if superheroes were in our world and actual people? Because if you and me were superheroes, we would not be the shining beacons of hope that Superman are. I disagree. And not that we're horrible people, but we're humans. We're humans. And we'd have incredible amounts of power. And who knows how that changes a person or not, right? So, like, those are the types of things. But anyway, that's kind of why I think I don't think it's just the pure escapism of it. I think it's more of an emotional connection to, being the best us that we can be. And maybe that's a bit more optimistic. Maybe people aren't that optimistic when they come into these films. But that's my personal opinion on it. That's why I think they're so incredibly popular. And as we go along, and as we get into more TV shows and TV series, we're getting more depth into these characters than we ever have before. And another way to connect with them. And I think that's part of it. Like, I don't think some little black kid watching the new Falcon and Winter Soldier and seeing a black man as Captain America, like, I think that's empowerment. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's just pure escapism. That's just look at the potential of what I could be. Look at the potential of what I could be. Not that they're Captain America, but the values and the things that he stands for, the trials and the battles that he overcomes. Look at what I can be. And I think that's why people go to these movies, man. That's maybe that's optimistic, but that's what I think. I think it's empowerment.
See, and like, I can kind of piggyback a little bit off of what you just said and continue to kind of help illustrate my point as well. Because the big thing that I think Kevin Feige pointed out, and I think he was smart to point out, but I think he missed a big thing, is, yeah, X-Men may have been the big film that changed that whole perspective on character and stuff like that. But all the superhero films that we got that were really, like, modern up until X-Men were all DC ones, minus Blade.
Yeah.
There were some campy Marvel ones that never really made it, like the old Captain America in the 90s. But, I mean, no one saw that movie. It was like a super low budget, no one would really care
Terrible,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I will disagree with you on X-Men being the first thing. Like, and it's kind of, this helped actually illustrate my point a bit. I disagree with you on X-Men being the first thing that, like, really helped us connect to character. And I think it speaks more to the source material of it being a Marvel thing more than specifically that movie. Because that movie's still cheesy and campy. We have it on at work, so I've been watching it, and oh boy, it still did not age well.
No,
it's not bad, but
it's a transitional film for sure.
But you got that character development and connection in the old Incredible Hulk TV show back in the 70s.
Well, that's why I said not all of them, right?
And that's where for me it's
like your TV shows, you got your old Superman films as well that were very charming. At least the first, two.
They're charming,
may be questionable, right?
But there's a thing where again there's a disconnect. There's a very strong disconnect, and that comes down to the fact that DC characters, and I've mentioned this before, DC characters aren't relatable. That's why to this day they still have DC films still
struggle, yeah,
because they're not relatable characters. Whereas Marvel, the way Stan Lee approached them, the way all those guys approached them, they made them as relatable as possible. They made them like themselves, like regular people who happen to have extraordinary abilities. Look at most of DC's people, are their heroes are pretty high profile in what they do in their life. There are a lot of rich people. There are a lot of they don't really have real world issues. And when they do, they're really overshadowed by the fantastical things that happen to them. Whereas, again, Spider-Man's the prime example, but even if you look at Hulk, if you look at even Cap, you look at, Tony, they really beat into the ground with alcoholism, and I think they kind of glossed over that, unfortunately, in the MCU. And that really could have made Tony Tony can be a relatable character at points, but not so much in the MCU. He can be, but not as much as some of the other guys
I think maybe possibly for you. I think there's a lot of people who could probably connect with Tony Stark. I think there's a lot of people who could probably connect with Tony Stark.
I'm not saying you can't connect with him. I'm saying it's he's not the most accessible or most relatable at the end of the day.
Fair enough. Yeah, a 10-year-old doesn't be like, I'm gonna get wasted.
Well, and it comes down a lot to his social standard, his setting where he is. He's a millionaire out the gate, and then you see him kind of struggle, and you're like, you're struggling because yeah, but then you get introduced with the PTSD and the trauma and stuff. He becomes more relatable. Whereas you never explore the PTSD that Batman except to make jokes about it. You never explore Batman's PTSD with his parents being killed in front of him.
Yeah,
they're just and that's why I'm Batman. And it's okay, but you had your mom and dad murdered in front of you at 8. But then to counter my own argument, there was, and people are now pointing this out, and I'm really happy they are. I'm really happy they're talking about it. There was a specific series of cartoons where they made the Justice League, they made these characters relatable. They made them people. And that was the DC animated universe. They actually made DC characters normal people.
I love those Justice League. I love that Justice League one.
There's this excellent scene in one of the Justice League episodes where they travel to a different multiverse and meet corrupt versions of themselves. And there's this back and forth between Batman and corrupt Batman, because they're basically debating on whether or not they should be using martial law and being basically being dictators of this planet, of their multiverse. And it's shot really interesting too, which is I love it when animation has great cinematography, because it shouldn't be seen as that, but it's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it is.
And how they shoot it is, so it's Kevin Conroy. It's the same voice actor, but he's voicing 2 different versions of Batman. However, whenever you're on one Batman, the voice that you're hearing is from the other Batman, it's an internal monologue. And they cut back and forth in their argument, and you never see the Batman who's talking actually talk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a beautiful moment, and you have this whole they're debating why do you think this is okay, and then the winning argument comes from the evil Batman, where he's like I'm doing this so some 8-year-old never has to lose their parent to some punk with a gun. And good Batman's okay, you got me, you win, I understand why you're doing what you're doing. And that's using Batman's parents without showing their murder like they do in every movie, because we have to do that for some reason. But you're using his parents and you're humanizing what happened to him. You're not looking at him like, oh, this is billionaire Bruce Wayne, who is very unrelatable. You've humanized him. You're like, this is the tragedy he went through. This is the trauma that he has faced. And they never really explore that a lot of the time. Like, there's a reason why he has a no guns, no killing rule, but that doesn't translate into cinema a lot of times.
Well,
In cinema, you want to see a superhero beat the ever-loving crap out of the bad guys.
beat the shit out of them.
And, like, unfortunately, yeah, if you punch the guy the right way, he's gonna die, because that's reality.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why Batman has such a strict no guns, no killing rule. They really, in the movies, like to overshadow that and just not touch on that at all. Because it's not as cinematic, it's not interesting, which makes him more unrelatable. Like, again, like, it's the idea of DC characters are just, because they don't have daily struggles, they're not relatable.
To be fair, the Dark Knight series did really focus on him not being a murderer.
In Batman Begins, they did.
No,
and then
they
it just
did the
kinda
Dark
went
Knight
right out
too.
the window.
No, that was a whole part of Joker's thing, was to try and crack Batman, get him to murder people. Like, you truly
killed
are
Harvey Dent.
incorruptible.
Then he killed Harvey Dent.
Well, to rescue the kid, like, maybe didn't mean, I don't know, the guy felt the bat. It's kind of like a death by whatever.
Right, yeah, sure,
But
whatever.
the point is, but even when Catwoman's fighting, when he's on the roof, she has the gun, he kicks it away. No killing. You know what I mean?
And then
like,
she bursts in the room with his motorcycle loaded with
blows
machine
up-
guns and
blows up
shoots Bane.
Well, she doesn't like his rule. It's Catwoman. You know, she'd do whatever she
Why?
wants.
But if it's his rule, why does he have those guns in the first place?
Well, probably not to blow up Bane.
But
It was a military tank. But the point is, like, he has those guns, he has those weapons, but he also restrains himself from using them. Like, when he's driving at the Joker in The Dark Knight, he doesn't just blow him away. You know what I mean? Like,
But that's the thing, is
he actually just falls over somehow and knocks himself out.
But that's
weird.
a problem, and that reflects that again betrays
I
the character.
I don't think
because-
it's so much a problem as it actually even cements more his whole not killing thing. Because still use it to, like, blast through walls and shit like that, too. It's just how he uses it. It's a choice. It becomes a conscious choice. You can't even deny that. If you have the guns and you choose not to use them, that becomes a conscious choice. And remember, he didn't design the vehicles. They were military vehicles beforehand. So he just got to take them as it is.
I just don't genuinely think that I can relate to anything in The Dark Knight, though. I don't think there's anything that I find, like, relatable.
Oh, I never said anything. I never said anything about you being able to relate to him. I just said they actually emphasize the fact that he doesn't kill multiple times across that trilogy. You get to Batman v Superman, that shit's out the window. That doesn't even matter, man. He's like murdering people left, right, and center. Like, okay, man. Like, you know, that's just kind of his thing. But to be fair, they really do emphasize that. But going back to your anime Justice League thing and your anime DC series, I think it's a testament to how powerful and how well done those shows were, and how well their characters were, and how relatable they were. Because when it came to Avengers, no one knew who the Avengers were before the Avengers were the Avengers. People explained the Avengers that, oh, it's Marvel's version of the Justice League. That's how you explained it before the Avengers came out, man. And then the Avengers came out, and nowadays it's like the Justice League is the DC version of the Avengers. Like, it's flipped around. The script has flipped.
I'm so mad at you because, like, I actually forgot that is a thing that has been said around me, by me, to, like
it's just how you explain it to people, right?
It has been so long that I didn't even remember that. Like, there was a time where, the Avengers... Dude, there was a time where, like... No one knew who Iron Man was.
Dude, I didn't know who I didn't. I saw the trailers for Iron Man. I was like, I could give a shit. And then I saw the movie. I was like, this is probably a fucking good movie. Yeah, but like, there was a time like no one knew any of these Marvel characters. Like
people knew
Spider-Man,
Spider-Man, Hulk, Daredevil,
Wolverine,
and then the X-Men. That was it, because they all had cartoons. Fantastic Four people kind of knew about, but not really.
Yeah. And like, it's crazy to think back on those days and how much it's changed.
At the end of the day, though, I stand by the thing that really changed was Marvel getting to make their own movies, and then people realizing, oh, these can be more than just about good versus. It's not about black and white, good versus evil.
I
It's
think
there's
possibly some of that. It also goes towards the direction, right? Because you could take all those characters in different directions that would make them completely unrelatable, too, right? Like I think it comes also down to the filmmaker's choices as well.
well, that's where I think superhero films, they were good for when they came out, but like when you go back, I feel like the Marvel films are going to age, like the MCU movies are going to age a lot better than all the early Marvel films. And the same thing with I think, but I think that's also why Tim Burton's Batman ages as well as it does too, and that's because it's so stylized that it becomes almost a fantasy, and that's with DC that works a lot better than your Marvels, because like with DC it is more fantasy based.
They're very much gods.
And they are. It's 100%. It's you're not meant to relate to them. You're meant to look up and aspire to be them. Marvel, you're meant to relate to them. You're meant to be like, oh, well, I've been where Peter Parker is. Mm-hmm. You know what? I may not be a super genius, but I can sympathize with Reed Richards.
You can make sense.
Oh, well. Yeah, like it's... And that's kind of what it is meant to be. And I think some of the problem with some of their newer characters and what they've done, how they've handled them, is a bit of a problem that I have with Marvel sometimes. Specifically, I know it's a polarizing conversation and topic, but the way they handle Captain Marvel, I think I'm watching the animated Avengers, and the way they handle Carol in that, and I really need to revisit Captain Marvel because I haven't watched it in a long time. But they handle Carol in that is essentially there is a bit more of a humility to her. But that's because they never took away her humanity, and she never was, like, confused as to who she was. She knew she was Carol Danvers when she got her powers. Mm-hmm. Whereas in, like, the MCU version of it, they took away her memories, they took away who she was as a person, and that almost gave her a bit of a god complex. Right? And that's kind of like...
Well, even for the Kree, she was, like, super powered, right?
Like, and that's the thing, is, like, and that's where it's, like, it was weird for me, because it's, like... It's this immediate... You lose that character because she views that, and people have a hard time relating, connecting her with her because she has that kind of god complex. The same thing when you meet Tony and you meet Doctor Strange. There are other two good examples people compare all the time. Tony is an arrogant person. He gets brought down really low, and then he builds himself back up. It's the same thing with Doctor Strange. He's a very arrogant person. Gets brought down to his low. The weird thing with me for them is that they don't actually shed that arrogant behavior. They act like they do and they say they do, but they keep it. And
human nature is hard to change, though. To be fair,
it's a weird thing. Again, this kind of it stems to my problem with the latest MCU things is they try and tell you how you should feel about a character rather than actually have that character change or have that character thing happen. And that's where, again, they say, well, they say Doctor Strange learned his lesson, or Iron Man learned his lesson, or learned to be humble, but you never see that. It's like saying stuff like that, especially in just behind the scenes stuff, where it's like, well, they learned on their journey. Okay, but you can tell me that, but you need to actually include that in the movie. You need to show me their change of character. It's the same thing with, and again, I admit I need to rewatch Captain Marvel. I never sensed a journey with her. I never sensed a part where she struggled. It was pretty early on where, like, the Kree ship shows up with Ronan, and she just flies up, stares it down, and they fly away. And it's like, that's...
Well, that was, like, the end of the film.
No, that was the beginning.
No, that was the end of the film.
No, the end of the film is when she's fighting Jude Law.
No, that was, like, the scene just before she beats the crap out of Jude Law.
It's still weird to me. It's still weird that he would just fly away.
Well, that's because she flew through a couple of their ships first.
This is why I'm saying I need to rewatch Captain Marvel.
Yeah, I was like, she did. You know what she did to Thanos' ship? Same thing. And that is one of the things that I have that's the one thing with like Captain Marvel. And I hope they I hope in the sequel, things kind of get shifted up and they're bringing in different elements.
Man,
I'm actually excited for that. It should be really, really good.
I loved Monica Rambeau so much
in WandaVision.
Yeah,
like she was.
I'm so excited for her.
And to have Miss Marvel, we'll see how that show turns out. I'm
on board.
Before the character, good characters. And again, some nice representation going on there. It's good to have these kind of influences going. But like, yeah, the one thing for Captain Marvel too, I just felt, you're right. She didn't struggle at all really through the film. She was just like hyper OP'd, but that's because her character, they wrote her to be super OP.
And it's
you know
because
what I mean.
They needed her to be that for Endgame. And the problem that I have with that logic, it's the same problem that I have with.
Is it like is and that's kind of like, yeah, but I don't know.
It's the same problem I have with Episode 3 of Star Wars, where they had to line up everything perfectly for Episode 4. All the pieces had to be in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing for this one, whereas, like, you can have Carol struggle, and she's gone for 30 years. I think it's 30 years. Yeah, she's gone for about 30 years. You can have her struggle in her movie and be like, well, I gotta go and get better. I gotta go out to space and, like, become the strongest I possibly can. And then she can come back and she can be great. There can be growth that we don't see on screen, but audiences nowadays don't like that. It's again why people. Okay, again, I'm sorry I keep relating it to Star Wars. People complaining that we never saw Rey train, except for we did on a couple training montages, but we didn't see in-depth training. But we didn't see that with in-depth training with Luke or Anakin either, and they could do Force stuff. We heard that they trained, but we didn't see it in depth.
We saw Luke carrying Yoda like a backpack, doing flips and shit. But that was it.
Rise of Skywalker, we saw Rey running through the woods. We saw her training with Luke. Like, there's so many similarities between them. And you never saw Anakin train at all. You're like, well, he's at the Jedi Temple, therefore he's
just like knock over like a whole teapot. Like, what was that?
I hope so. But that's the thing, and that's where a lot of people, they don't like this idea now of, like, having a character come back from off screen and being more powerful than what they are. So in movies now, we need to set up their strength already. And that's the problem I have with, like, we didn't need her to be OP in Captain Marvel. We could have waited and had that happen when she came back. I think that would have been cool. I also would have liked her to have actually been in Endgame, as opposed to, like,
and that's
I'm at the beginning, and then I'm at...
And that's why I don't even think it was just because of Endgame. I think that's literally just how they designed the character. And because she got her powers from the Tesseract. You know what I mean? I think they literally intentionally designed her to be the most powerful character in the MCU, kind of, or the most powerful hero or something physically. And
then Scarlet Witch just comes in and just wrecks
wreck shop, man, wreck shop.
Well,
but also Scarlet Witch got her powers. Well, she technically, I guess, already had her powers, but they were enhanced from the Mind Stone or whatever, or brought out.
And that's where it just, like, again, like, it frustrates me that it's a mishandling of a character that I really like and was really looking forward to. It's the same thing with Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman's character, and I really liked her in the first Wonder Woman movie. And then by the time we get to the second Wonder Woman movie, I was like, what am I watching and what's going on? Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating to watch these characters that I really love and care about and just see them not be handled to the best that they can be, you know? And I'm not saying they need to fit into my interpretation at all, because I don't really necessarily have an internal interpretation of these characters. But I feel like a lot of times, especially nowadays, with the problem I have with modern Marvel films is it's always connecting. It's always about what's connecting to the next thing, what's always building to the next thing, as opposed to focusing on making a good standalone superhero film. Or a good standalone superhero piece that can tie in.
Yeah, I'm kind of like 50. I'm not fully with you on that one. I do think they do pretty well at doing standalone films when they do them. Because a lot of the ties only ever come in post-credit scenes, a lot of the time.
But it's usually building up to their next big thing. And, like, that's where,
everything's
again, like,
always building up to your next big thing.
And I don't know. It's one of those things of... I think that's where there's also this appeal now to these non-Marvel products and the non-DC products. I think Invincible and The Boys are doing as well as they are is because they're not those things. It's a step away.
They aren't, and it's a different viewpoint on the hero film or the hero TV series, right? Like, we've gone the same thing. Like, we understand the superhero thing, but like when you twist them and take it from a different viewpoint and angle, well, kind of interesting. It's interesting. But again, that's only going to last so far too. Yeah,
are they different?
Like it's a different. It's coming at it from a different viewpoint, right? And a different perspective.
I would argue that The Boys is for sure. I don't necessarily think Invincible is, because Invincible, when you look at the world they live in, it is 100% more grounded in reality, and they focus more on what also happens to the world around them, which actually has been tackled in like a lot of comics too. Like there's this arc of Justice Society where I want to say it's the Flash becomes the mayor and has to deal with all he has to deal with all like the bureaucracy of like actually repairing the cities after they destroy them, and actually he starts taking it on himself to rebuild the cities and rebuild neighborhoods with his super speed single-handedly. Like and that's interesting. That's a cool way to look at it. You're looking at it completely. Perspective is the right word to say, because you're looking at it from a more grounded perspective. You're not looking at it from oh yes, I went and I punched Darkseid through the moon with 0 consequences while the tides are actually getting thrown out of whack because the moon's in 2 pieces now.
Yeah, you totally effed up the world. Good job.
But that's never focused on. That's never actually reflected on. And that's where, like, even with Civil War, I feel like they dropped the ball on that, because, like, yes, look at the destruction that you guys did. But by the way, none of that matters because we're going to talk about Bucky for the rest of the movie. Like, the Sokovia Accords should have been the only focus of Civil War. That should have been your main driving factor. As opposed to, like, yes, it's about the Sokovia Accords. We've kind of splintered. But now, because your best friend killed your other friend's parents, that's the real problem. And, like, that... They were almost there.
I can agree with that. I can agree with like the ending, the motivation for the ending. I can get that.
And
I understand where you're coming from that. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't ultimately bother me nowadays, but like, yeah, I think I remember I remember
at this point,
watching
it is what it is, right?
I think I remember 2016 watching it, and like when the end came to just like a more personal thing, which isn't a bad thing either, but the fact that it was like so out of it very much was out of left field, right? Like, and it just felt like if this was the whole plan, like
this could have just been its own thing. Like, this didn't need to be Civil War.
It kind of could have been, right? Like, it kind of really could have been the core, like even the motivation behind Civil War, but
and that's where, again, Invincible does it so well, because I think it is superheroes from a different perspective. But that's because it's not afraid to show the damages that are done in the city. Mm-hmm. Like, especially that final episode with, like, the big fight when they got into Chicago and stuff like that.
Yep.
Dude, all I gotta say, the train. The subway. Just, I've never seen anything like that.
Oh, man, that was savage. Like, that whole thing, but that's the best part of, like, and what Invincible's doing is... One of the best parts of it is the characters, is the raw emotion. Everything, like, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't have the same impact if it wasn't, if the relationship between them weren't there, right? It's like the relationship and like the horror of the realization, and then the intense violence, and like, but it's also just heartbreaking. You know what I mean? Like, it's heartbreaking. But that's where it gets. It's like, that's the good shit. It's not all the damage and that kind of stuff is really cool, but it's the emotional heartbreak, man. It's the emotional heartbreak. That's what it is.
It all ties back to Star Wars.
That's what it is.
And that's where I think The Boy. It's funny though, because it's so weird and it's so absolutely bizarre, because like you watch Invincible and you see that hyper violence and you see that and it's animated and you feel sick and you feel like, oh no, like that's intense. Now, The Boys is hyper violent too.
Yeah.
When the violence happens, though, how often do you feel sick, or how often are you more or less laughing?
I'm laughing
when it happens.
But that's because it's also kind of tongue in cheek, like the attitude that comes out of it too,
and that's
right?
the thing, is it's a weird behind the scenes look at what, and that's that's the perfect word for it. I'm gonna say that for myself. It's a behind the scenes look at what superheroing would be if it was in the real world. Mm-hmm. if it was corporatized, if it was like, big corporations got their hands on superheroes, that's 100% how it would be behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Whereas Invincible, there isn't a corporation that's running it. Invincible is more closely related to your Superman,
your standard superhero. Yeah,
but you see it from a more grounded perspective. And actually, there's a lot of comics in DC that do tackle that, but it's more with side characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not with your main god characters. It's with your sidekicks, the lesser known teams, that kind of stuff. And then with Marvel, it's the same thing. It depends on the characters, and it depends on who. Like, you're gonna get more grounded stuff with Luke Cage and with Daredevil and with Spider-Man than you are with Iron Man and Cap. And again, that's why I kind of have an issue with Spider-Man being an Avenger as young as he is, because it's like, okay, you haven't had that growth of learning to be Spider-Man before you become an Avenger.
That build up. And I mean, like, yeah, well, like even, it's I mean, a lot of these things do come also down to, like, contractually, right? It's like, well, if you have Spider-Man now, who knows how long you're going to have him? And he almost didn't even get a third film. You know what I mean? Like, he almost... that almost got cut short. And not cut short, their deal just expired. But, like, they didn't know at that point if you're going to renew. So if you have him, you just got to use them where you can, right? So that's some, like, sometimes business junk that kind of gets in the way of the storytelling of it.
And that's where, like, I still wish, and, like, yes, it's because he is my favorite Spider-Man. I'll fully say that. I do wish that they would have been able to go with Andrew Garfield as, like, an older, like, in his 30s Spider-Man. He's been doing this for a while thing instead, because I think that would have been another very interesting way to look at Spider-Man that we haven't got a chance to see. We never got to see fully grown-up Peter.
Yeah.
Like, we can kind of say that we did in like, Spider-Man 2 and 3, but the problem is Peter in Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 felt like he was the same age, and
like every time,
even when he was in high school,
yeah,
he never really grew.
Well, he was just finishing high school too.
Whereas, so. And then Andrew Garfield's, there is a specific growth between those that we could have explored more in a third film if we got it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we didn't. But we could have explored that if he was able to be brought in with the Avengers, and it would have been a very different take than Tom Holland's. I think his movies would have been a lot more different. Mm. But I think his interactions with the Avengers
would have been interesting.
Yeah. And it would have been pretty much the same. The only thing I think we wouldn't have got did you see that old movie Empire Strikes Back? Like, why are they doing that with Spider-Man? Why are them like...
Because he's a youngin'. They're just...
But he's a nerd. He would know that. Like, that's the thing that
bugs me. He does know that, but to them, like, you gotta think, like, nowadays, like, Empire's, like, really old. To, like, the kids in high school right now. Like, my daughter's going into high school. Like,
but would your daughter ever come home and ask you if you've ever heard of this old movie called Alien?
Like, maybe, because it's freaking
I don't know,
old,
man.
Like, it's just... I think they're just trying to be like, oh, look at young kids. He's Spider-Man. They're just really... What they're doing is just like, we're really emphasizing just how young he is. Wink, wink, nod, nod. He called Empire old. Like,
it's the studios trying to be, hey, fellow kids.
Yeah, hello, fellow children.
It's the same thing as, like, in Black Panther. Like, the one... Like, I love Black Panther. The weirdest moment in the world is when Shuri does the whole "what are those" thing to Black Panthers. In Black
the sandals.
Yeah, it's like, what are those? Like, okay, I get that, but, like, that's also a reference that is not going to age. Like, no one knows what that reference is anymore. They're like, oh yeah, Vine was a thing. I forgot about that.
Honestly, I didn't even get that reference. Like, I just thought she was like, nice sandals, loser.
No, it's a reference to Vine. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I never even saw that video.
And that's again, it's the idea of they're trying to be like, well, let's relate to the kids, and it's like, no, you don't have to relate.
You know what? I'm gonna go on a limb here and say you're wrong about that. Saying that, like, I'm saying I don't think it's intentionally the Vine, and maybe it is. Maybe the Vine dude's also wearing sandals in his feet or whatever. I've never seen the video, but even if you said that, the kids nowadays would also not even get it because Vine was gone long before they jumped online.
But that's what I'm saying, like, is they try, like, that's the problem with...
That's what I think, like, I interpreted that as she was like, What are the like your feet are
No,
out?
it's
Why are you wearing sandals,
it's a s-
bro? Like I
it's a
don't think it's.
specific
I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
dude. No, it
I don't
100%
think it
is.
is.
This isn't even. Dude, this isn't even a debate. This is actually that's what it was. It was a reference to that thing.
Is that what they
at
said?
the time.
Is that what Ryan
It is
Coogler
what it
came out and
is.
said? Did Ryan
It is what
Coogler
it
say
is.
it?
I don't know if he
Okay,
came up
well
with
then
it,
don't
but
be
I know
telling me
for a
that's
fact-
100% guaranteed thing.
No, I don't know
man.
if he's the one who said it has to be in there, but I guarantee you someone's like, you need to put something in that the kids are going to relate to. And like that's
Dude,
what
the
it
kids
is,
wouldn't even
because it's-
relate to that, so that doesn't even make sense. That logic
No,
makes
the kids at the time when the
zero
movie
sense.
came out, they did.
No, there was no Vine. Vine was
Yes.
long gone before Black Panther.
No.
Black Panther came out in like 2018, dude.
Yeah, Vine didn't die. Dude, it's only been 3 years.
Really, I feel like it was longer than that. Google it.
That's what we're doing.
I was like, didn't Vine die a long time ago? I feel like it's been dead forever. Maybe not. Maybe you're wrong.
It died in 2017. And
Well then, I'm gonna give you a maybe. I'm gonna give you a maybe.
so yes, she was referencing they were referencing the meme for sure, and it's because Shuri would be aware of that meme because of her age in the show or in the movie. So it is a reference to the meme, but it is also specifically calling out his footwear because he was just crowned king and was wearing sandals. So it's like we were both actually right.
Like, yeah, okay.
That's from the actress. Like I just watched a clip where the actress
Oh,
talked
okay,
about it.
okay. Well, if she said it,
Yeah.
she said it, then
So
okay, I'll give it to you.
We're both
you.
right.
I'll give it to you.
It's a hey fellow kids, but technically it makes sense because this was hot when she was a kid at the time, I guess.
It seems like a deep cut. Either way, it naturally flowed in there because I wasn't like, well, this is a fellow kids reference. Like for me, because I never seen that, I was just like,
See, whereas
this
for me, as
reaction
someone
makes sense for the character.
As someone who knew that meme, I was just like, oh boy, a meme in a movie? Why, guys? Why?
Interesting.
Yeah. I think regardless of the why, I think it's a matter of like we just need to accept that superhero films are kind of here. They're here to stay. Like a constant comparison is the fact that they're the modern Western.
Yeah, at least for the foreseeable future. I mean, I do think at some point, obviously, the bubble will pop, like all things, and we'll just get less of them. But I don't think they'll ever fully go away.
No, and I don't think they will either, but I think it's gonna go back to more of what it was, where we get like a Batman film or a Spider-Man film or a so-and-so film every once in a while. But I mean, I think the film industry itself is changing massively.
Yeah.
In the next 10 to 20 years, I think things are gonna shift very differently from what we know as traditional cinema. I think that's just the reality. I think it's the idea of we just need to be open to change. I think there'll still be traditional movies to come out here and there, but I don't think when it comes to these big franchises, when it comes to these series, I think something's going to shift. And I don't know what it is. I don't know which direction it's going to go. But something will change. And I think, though, it sounds bad because we just spent a while talking about it. I think the why doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's just the fact that it's here and it means so much to people. And it's kind of been interesting for me as a fan of superheroes for the majority of my life, because there has been a lot of times where I got jaded because people were connecting to these things that I got made fun of for
So
liking when I was a
long,
kid.
yeah. And you were
But
like the
as
only
time is-
one.
But as time has gone on more and more, I'm just happy that people have that thing to connect to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy that people have that thing that they can like and enjoy. And a lot of people take it too far. I'll fully say that. I think like liking something and being a fan of something, that's not a bad thing. When it's your entire identity though, and it's basically who you are as a person, I think that's where it can kind of become a bit detrimental.
Yeah, it's a problematic. Well, that's problematic for anything, not just superhero films, right?
No, it's music as well. Yeah. It's sports. Like you name something that is your entire identity. It's not going to be incredibly healthy. It's the idea of, again, it's balance.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you can have something that can help better you and make you a stronger person and have something that you can, pull you out of the darkness when you're feeling low. It can help you escape. The escapism is not a bad thing. And I think maybe that's something that we kind of glossed over. When we talk about escapism, it's not like we're sitting here going like, ooh, boo, escapism, it's terrible. No, escapism is necessary. That's what listening to music is. That's what watching sports is. That's what watching movies, reading books, going outside for a walk.
To just get away from your troubles for a little bit.
Exactly.
Set them down. You got to pick them right back up as soon as the credits roll, but for a couple hours, you're free.
Having hobbies.
And I think like that doesn't even, again, it's not a bad thing. I think it just doesn't apply to exclusively superhero films or TV shows, right? Like it's all films. It's all TV shows.
Any entertainment.
And again, we find, I think there's obviously multiple reasons why. It's never the sole reason, I don't think. Sometimes maybe it is, but like, it's not always 100% the sole reason for every single person. But I think, yeah, there's a lot of good reasoning there.
And I think that's kind of, to me at the end of the day, like, again, as much as, and there's plenty of bad there. I'm still watching The Flash, and I still get angry every single week. I watch the episode, and I'm like, why am I watching this? There are other shows that I could watch that I like, but I don't know.
You just have the hope it's just gonna get better every week, right?
It hasn't. It really hasn't. And
I haven't watched the CW ones for quite a while.
Legends of Tomorrow is still great. I can't wait for season 6. It's been released, but I can't watch it anywhere because it's not on any streaming site yet. And then like it's actually not the CW ones, although apparently Superman and Lois is really good, and Stargirl is really good. That's another CW one, but like it's very different than traditional CW. But otherwise, Titans, Doom Patrol. I feel like there's another one I'm missing, but like there's good CW stuff out there. There's good
Black
DC
Lightning.
Stuff out there.
Black Lightning was money, man. I haven't seen actually the last season or the last two.
See, and I haven't watched any of Black Lightning.
So yeah, Black Lightning's pretty damn good. Especially the first season was pretty late. And the one thing that I really enjoyed on Black Lightning compared to the other ones, well, the other ones they kind of have that I want to say sometimes forced conflict, right? It's like, oh, I don't trust you. Oh, why didn't you tell me this? Like,
we need to go talk in a hallway.
Whether it's Flash, Green Arrow, or Supernatural, it always tends to be someone's lying or holding something back from someone, and it's an easy source of conflict. But
I was just doing this to protect you.
Yeah, exactly. But why didn't you tell me? Like, it always happens, man. Like,
because I love you. That's why.
It's like a CW trope, man. It's like that's their thing. Black Lightning, I felt the conflict was actually like really good, mainly natural, and tackled something different than the other ones at the time, which was more like family related and stuff like that, and obviously culturally, right?
Well, and it's one of the reasons why like I haven't watched Black Lightning, and I do want to give it a shot, but like the problem that I had when they advertised it, when they marketed it. It was right after Luke Cage came out and was a big success, and it just felt like DC was using that character and that culture to try and get money as well, and be like, hey, like, yeah, you like Luke Cage? Well, look at our black superhero. and it felt really cheap to me, especially when you are going to be tackling that stuff. You're going to be tackling a culture we don't normally see on TV. You're going to be.
Yeah, if you watch it, it's not cheap though, man. The writing is like really strong.
And that's,
it does have like and its structure is very different compared to the other ones too. You'll find as you're watching it. I did find there was a couple. I think it was season 2, maybe. There was a couple of little kind of lulls and dip downs and things.
Yeah,
but it is like it's a very character based show. Like there are moments where it's flashy and stuff, but so much of it, dude, is just so much like it's a lot of character work that carries that show, and that's kind of what made it more unique and stand out a little bit more than the other ones. But again, this is going back a couple of years. Like I haven't seen season 3 or 4. I think 4 is the final season. Like that. I think so. That series ended or is ending.
It is ending currently,
but I haven't seen the 3rd season yet.
But it's funny though, because like their newer series that aren't really connected, like, and maybe it started with Black Lightning, but the same thing with Swamp Thing apparently, and people are still confused why that got canceled because it was so different, but it worked. Stargirl is very different.
Well, Swamp Thing got canceled before it even came out, so it wasn't even clearly whatever the issue was. It wasn't a matter of quality. Like, it got canceled before it even came out, like, so.
And then again, Legends is a great example of it because it starts out very stereotypical CW, and it just gets so weird. It just goes.
They just go for it. They just go for it.
By
I haven't seen like the
5,
I haven't seen like the newer seasons again, but like the earlier
season
ones.
3.
I think I saw 1, 2, and 3. I think.
After season 3 and onwards, man, it just gets bonkers. It gets bizarre in the best way possible, and like.
Well, I think they just started having fun with the concept, right? Like,
100%.
It wasn't like, let's just keep it cool and grounded. It was just like, let's just go all out. If we're gonna do it, let's freaking do it, man. Which is a great attitude. When you got like a concept like that, you just gotta go for it. But anyway, yeah. Maybe the why isn't as important, but I think superhero films have overall, like, if I was to say, I would say they probably had overall like a positive effect on society for the most part. I think it gives us a lot of different stories, and it's brought a lot of different characters, and it's kind of its own mythology, right? Like, really, superheroes are. It's kind of modern day mythology. But it's kind of like you said, right? Like, you used to get annoyed that people were like, oh, no, this is super cool. And it's like, okay, why wasn't it super cool a couple years ago when you guys are making fun of me, dickheads? But I think it's just cool that a lot of people can have found solace, have found encouragement, empowerment in these stories. And I think I think a lot of these films, not all of them, like, let's be honest, not all of them, especially in the MCU. Like, the MCU puts out really solid films, but not all of them are like groundbreaking masterpieces, right? Like, it's like anything. You put out 20-some movies, not all 20 are going to be like home runs, right? You're going to have your couple, hits that aren't as great. But a lot of those films have become more than just superhero films to people, right? A lot of these things really have significant impact. So it's just, I think overall they do have a positive effect and continue to have a positive effect, minus the hardcore fans who just like to argue with each other about stuff. Maybe not that great, but I think they've always been there anyway, so I don't think it's changed too much on that end.
No, and I agree, and I think it's, I don't know. I know we've said it a few times, but I think, the why isn't important. It's that it's here. And I think the question comes more down to the individual. Why are superhero films important to you?
Mm-hmm.
Is that our question of the day?
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot we were actually going to do one of those. But I think that's a great question of the day.
Yeah, I think we just stumbled upon our question of the day. So, Matt, why are superhero films
actually, it's my question first, so I will ask you. So
why do you get to have your question first?
Because you're hosting.
We never decided on this at all.
That's the pattern.
Patterns are meant to be broken.
Not today. Ethan, why are superhero films important to you?
You just don't have an answer.
What? Of course I do. I just get to ask you first.
I mean, mine's easy. Like, for me, why superhero films are important to me is because it's been such a big part of my life. Superheroes have been a massive part of my life since as long as I can remember. It's something that me and my dad bonded over. He's the one who got me into them there was the cartoons and movies that I'd watch on TV, but like when it comes to comics, he showed me his old Fantastic Four comics from when he was a kid. Mm-hmm. We used to go out and buy comic books together, like at this there's this one just like kiosk in one of the malls in Saskatoon where they just had these bundles of random comics for like $2 or $3, and just random books that weren't connected to each other, and we just buy them and go home, and I'd look through them and read them. And so there's that, a lot of the escapism, a lot of the stuff that helped me deal with things when I was younger and deal with struggles that I had when I was younger. there's just a lot of it is very personal to me, and I think it always will be. It's just that little bit of extra sense of helping me understand who I was and who I am. And I don't think that's going to go away. I think it helped teach me morals too. Definitely helped me learn right from wrong. And it reflects in how I treat people and how I act as a person. Because it's, again, it's you want to act, not to say that I'm trying to be a hero and all that kind of stuff, but it's the idea of, again, acting heroic, doing what's right, doing what's good. And I think that's shaped a lot of who I am as a person. Like, again, for me, it's super weird because I've been successfully articulating as the why, but it just always has been at the end of the day, and that's maybe a cop-out on an answer, but I can't remember a time in my life without superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that I'm getting these movies, the fact that I have so much media now to dive into, and the fact that I'm still finding new things to read and get into.
Yeah.
It's great. Like, it's, again, like, this has been 30 years. Well, probably, I can't say exactly 30 years, but probably at least...
At least 29, maybe 4 months.
I would say, well, because I remember watching Batman the Animated Series as far back as I can remember.
Yeah.
So it's probably been at least anywhere from 28 to 27 years. Mm-hmm. Superheroes have been in my life and been a part of my life. Like, a game that me and one of my old friends used to play when we played Batman and Robin, but it was like the Adam West Batman and Robin because that's what we watched on TV.
Yeah.
But we always argued over who was going to be Robin. Neither of us wanted to be Batman. I wanted to be Robin because I was shorter than him. He wanted to be Robin because he was younger than me.
Ooh, classic predicament.
And there's, again, that's as far back as I can remember. And there's things like that. Like, several memories I have relate to superheroes. Mm-hmm. And, like, I think, again, that's where they are always going to be important to me and special to me.
Damn, man. Good answer.
It's just my life, man. I'm sorry.
It's just life.
I'm so sorry.
Bro, it's just life.
Blame my dad. Actually, no. So, okay, fun story. I love this story, and it is a very sweet story. I might have told it on this podcast already. I don't think so. My dad's nickname for me is Bucky.
Okay.
I thought he was calling me, because my other nickname is Buddy. And I thought he was just saying buddy in a weird way. And then I was like 20-something, we were talking, and he's like, I call you Bucky, right? And I'm like, because Buddy, right? And he's like, no, I'm Steve.
You're Bucky.
You're Bucky. And so, like, now anytime Bucky in the Winter Soldier or Steve pops up, I'm just like, oh, Dad. Oh, hey, Dad.
Man,
like,
that's pretty sweet.
Like, I know. I'm really upset that it took me
20 years to like put that back together.
I was reading and watching Captain America and Bucky and like the old cartoons and all that stuff all the time, and he called me Bucky, but I never connected it to Bucky Barnes. Yeah. I was just like, oh, it's Buddy. It's a weird.
Well, that's because you didn't connect your dad to Captain America. I can't.
Because I don't call my dad Steve. I call my dad Dad.
What's up, Cap?
I should start calling him that now.
You should.
That should be my new nickname for him is Cap.
Hey, Cap, how's it going? What's happening, Cap?
And I gotta make a friend named Sam so I can call him Cap at some point too.
Yeah. Very nice.
So Matt, do you have an answer yet, or are you just gonna segue into the exiting or ending?
No, I totally have an answer. It's probably not as like.
Dude, again, it's
you're always like throwing out like these like deep curveballs. You're like, everything is life, and I was like, God damn it, man! Why can't we just do simple answers? But no, when you really
started it,
when you really think about, for me, part of it is like kind of I already talked about, right? Like it's kind of almost self-empowerment. It is those morals and the things that heroes stand for, and it kind of gives me as a person, and especially growing up as a kid, something to strive for, something to be better than I was. Like a lot of the stuff too, I think And like, I don't know, I don't want to like talk too much about it because I kind of want to save some stuff for next week too. But even for myself, like, it's just, I think some of these characters become role models for you. You know, especially when you're younger, especially when you don't have a ton of role models that you base yourself off of or that you can see yourself in. When you find these characters that you recognize parts of yourself in. And I think that's why, for me, like, again, like I said, it's about trying to achieve and be, you know, the same morals of these characters, but not just because they are, because you already see parts of yourself in the characters themselves, right? Into who they are. And you're like, yes, that is something I can be. Even whether it's a white dude, Asian dude, black dude, doesn't matter, man. But honestly, I love Jon Stewart's Green Lantern in the Justice League animated series, right? Like,
Oh, dude, he's so
like
great.
he was so good. And then when the Ryan Reynolds movie came out, I was like, wait, why is he white? Where's the black Green Lantern? What the hell is this? Because I didn't realize there was multiples at that point. Because, you know, I never read a lot of the comic books, but growing up all the time, man, like those Saturday morning cartoons and watching the old Batman films. Funny enough, I didn't really watch the Joel Schumacher ones that much. Like, I remember we went theaters, but they were never two of the film. Like, I owned Batman 89, I owned Batman Returns, and then I never owned the other two. But
I mean, you're not
like,
missing much.
exactly, right? Because the other two were so good. But comic book films, and these things have always been a part of my life, and they're important to me, just simply for the fact they just kind of like you said, it just helps you become a better person and kind of gives you that goal, and you have these characters and these images, and these role models that you kind of build yourself after. But also the fact too, it really helped spark a lot of my creativity because a lot of it was so out of this world, right? Like it wasn't just a grounded piece of content. Superheroes are out of this world. Like the closest you get to in the world is Batman, you know what I mean? And even he is a little out of there. When you guys like Spider-Man swinging around the city, like who doesn't just picture and envision themselves swinging around the city? Like who, like if you could have like, man, it's either flight or swinging around the city as Spider-Man. Like
It depends on the city you're living in.
Yeah, I know.
Man.
Saskatoon would be terrible. Like
I used to think about it all the time, and I'm like, I can swing to 4 buildings, and you can't even swing. I used to think maybe you could do telephone pole to telephone pole, but like the physics of that, they're spaced out so far
it
apart
wouldn't work at
that
all.
you physically, no, it's too long of a rope. Even in the halfway point, it's not as tall as the telephone poles or the light posts are.
Yeah.
You'd have to jump from roof to
just
roof, which is still doable, but like then what's the point of being Spider-Man?
Spider-Man? Exactly. But like who hasn't envisioned those things, right? Like who hasn't envisioned flight? Who hasn't envisioned like the powers of Superman and being able to fly like on the ground and like up into the atmosphere? Like it's just those types of things like really sparked a lot of my own creativity. And obviously a lot of the character work that kind of went along with it too. So, like, while it's not like as emotionally probably impactful for me as it is for you, like connection with your dad and you have all these memories and stuff. For me, it was really part of building my character and who I was as a person, having those role models, having, you know, these characters and these people that you could look up to. But also, again, sparking that creativity. And it still inspires me today. Like, I still today, you know, constantly when I'm watching those films, you get lost in it. You get lost in the fantasy of it. To have the lightning like Thor, to be as strong as the Hulk, to suit up like Iron Man and fly away, like that would be so freaking cool, man. So cool. It inspires you to create different characters and, you know, powers of their own. It's just, that's the joy of art, I guess. Not even superheroes, just art in general, right? Just continue to inspire other people. What you make we pretend sometimes we live in this bubble, but we're all interconnected. Everyone's inspired by something that someone else has created. So 100%. It's pretty cool that way. But yeah, no, that's kind of what superhero films mean to me. Like they're important. They are a lot of fun. but they're those sparks of imagination. They're those morals and those characters that we get to work towards. Heroes honestly represent the best of us, even if they're flawed. You know, they still try to be the best that they can be,
especially if they're flawed.
And that's something that we can all aspire to be. So, 100%, man, 100%. Anyway, that's it.
All right, so that wraps up another episode of A Feast of Films. Matt, where can the good people find you?
You can find me over on YouTube at Storytellers for Life. Just put out a new video actually about characters and how they deal with change. Spoiler alert.
I don't like change.
Not well. Exactly. But it's really great for it's really important for their character arcs and stuff. Because if characters just immediately accepted change, movies would be very boring.
You know, Matt, you need to stop calling me out my real life stuff. You just gotta leave me alone.
It'll create a great story. But yeah, come over there. Storytellers for Life. All about helping you reignite your dreams, live your purpose, tell your stories. Come on by. Ethan, what about you? Where can the good people find you?
Well, I mean, I might be homeless in a few months, so I don't know.
I'll just be doing the podcast by myself. It'll be like, bro, Ethan
just
can't find electricity.
You just do your best impression of me, so they keep thinking that I'm here.
I don't think anyone would buy that.
Just say "white boy" over and over again when you're talking about talking from me. Oh, these are my thoughts. Ethan, how about you? White boy, white boy, white boy, white boy.
White boy, white boy, white boy, white boy, vanilla yogurt. Okay.
That's my new nickname is vanilla yogurt. Sure, I'll take it.
Oh, man.
I'm bland, but people like me, I guess.
You're an acquired taste.
Exactly. I'm not everyone's favorite, but I'm the safe choice.
It honestly feels like that kind of sums up your life. Ethan just starts crying. He's like, "Oh man, this got too real, too real."
No one really wants me, but if I'm there, they'll
just
have me
tell
anyway.
the people where to find you before you have a mental breakdown.
Too late.
Oh man.
You can find me on Instagram at Ethan R. Hill. You can find me on YouTube at Ethan R. Hill, and you can also find mine and Mr. Jesse Prosser's feature film Damned Rights at realhouse.org. You can buy it, you can rent it, you can download it, you can stream it, and give us your money. That's my plug.
You can buy it, throw it in the fire if you want. It's up to you. Once you buy it, it's yours.
I mean, it's a digital copy, so you're going to be throwing your computer in the file, so I wouldn't recommend
you
that.
can still do it though.
I mean, yes, I just wouldn't recommend it.
There you go.
Computers are expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been another episode of Feast of Films, episode 31, part 1. Tune in next week for us to talk about diversity and inclusion and why it matters. I've been your host, Ethan R. Hill, and with me as always is...
Matt Ayalew.
We'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week, everybody. Oh, you cut me off, man.
Sorry.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
So long.
Toodaloo. Bum, 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 bum,
Can't
bum,
believe you,
bum,
Matt.
bum, bum, bum.
Bah, bah, bah.
Yes, you can. Bum, 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 bum. Only me. Maybe you like it back and you show your highness. Prove this, your highness.